All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us for our special coverage of the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Luigi Mangione was just in court. This is the suspected shooter. He was in court in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where he's facing weapons charges and a forgery charge, but they're really more like placeholder charges, because really what we're focusing on, what will the charges be in New York when the attempt will be to extradite him back to New York? Well, we just found out, it was just released to us, the felony arrest warrant was released in New York, and he is facing charges of murder in the second degree, weapons possession charges, and possession of a forged instrument in the second degree as well. We'll get into that in a little bit. But right now, I want to bring on Law&Crime Sierra Gillespie, who is not only in Altoona, Pennsylvania, not only was she just in the hearing, and she's going to give us a bird's eye view about what happened in that hearing, but as we speak, as we bring her on live right now, she is outside of that McDonald's where Luigi Mangione was actually arrested yesterday. So Sierra, I'm going to turn it over to you as we talk about the hearing and, of course, McDonald's. And aside from the fact that the McRib is back on the menu, big news. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on in the show. You were in the hearing right now. Before we even get into what was decided in the hearing, I mean, Luigi Mangione goes into that hearing screaming to the press and making some wild comments. What did he say when in the courtroom?
You know what, Jesse, this is one of those cases where we have updates literally minute by minute. So when our photog was outside and saw Mangione come inside, he had that little scuffle, he yells a bit and was even a little bit violent. That happened, and moments later when he comes into the courtroom, nothing. I am telling you, this man walks inside, stone cold face. He's surrounded by about 10 different officers. And of course, he's wearing that orange jumpsuit that says DOC on the back of it. And he's got his handcuffs in front of him, the belt attached. But this guy looks, like he doesn't even care. Honestly, what it reminded me of is when you're in high school and you're looking at the clock, kind of waiting for the bell to ring. That was him waiting for this hearing to begin, just kind of looking around, didn't really care much. So in the beginning, we didn't really hear much from him. We did eventually hear a bit of an outburst when the hearing proceeded. But other than that, we saw him a couple of times turn back into the gallery, kind of looking back at us reporters, almost counting the number of media that were in there. So it was interesting to see the differences between before the hearing, during, and after.
Yeah, look, I've mentioned it before. We have to be observant of everything he says and does, A, to give us an indication if he really did this, why he did it, but number two, from a legal point of view, is a mental health defense on the table. Now, I could go day in and day out about how that might not work for him, considering there's evidence that he escaped and fled and knew what he did, but putting that to the side, I want to talk about what happened in the hearing. Talk to me about what the defense and the prosecution were both arguing for.
Okay, so let's start with the prosecution because that's how the hearing began. They came forward and said, this man is a fugitive of the law. Not only does he face these charges here in Pennsylvania, which, as you pointed out, placeholder charges, compared to the charges he faces in New York, second-degree murder. That's what we're talking about here. So the prosecution straight away says, we do not want him to receive bail. He should remain behind bars. And also, they kind of went through everything that happened when he was arrested at this very McDonald's right behind me. They talked about the medical masks that he was wearing, which I want you to remember. That'll come back soon. So the medical masks, he had additional ones. He had a Faraday bag, of course, the 3D gun. All of these things that we've been talking about a lot. The prosecution went through this laundry list and said, okay, we don't want bail. That's the way it is. So up next is the defense. They come forward and say, wait a minute, those charges in Pennsylvania are completely different than the charges from New York. That doesn't make sense. We are going to fight this extradition, number one. And what he's accused of in New York has nothing to do with Pennsylvania. So again, let's focus on those. He replies to what the prosecution says in regards to all of the things that were found at this McDonald's and goes back to the medical mask. And that is when we hear vocalized from Mangione for the first time. Honestly, it was kind of a lot happening all at once. He seemed to yell at the defense attorney. And then immediately the defense attorney said, and I quote, do not say a word. So after that, he was pretty quiet, but it was interesting to hear.
That's fascinating. My gosh. And at the end of the day, what was decided by the judge? What is the current status? We're watching this live video of him speaking out as he was going into that courthouse. So what was decided at the hearing, and what is the status of Luigi Mangione moving forward?
So for now, bail was denied. So he will go back to where he was being held yesterday. It's about 45 minutes away from this McDonald's and from the courthouse where we just were. He'll continue to be held there. After that, the defense has about 14 days to file a writ of habeas corpus. Additionally, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has 30 days to receive a governor's warrant from the state of New York because, of course, there are charges there are charges here. It's kind of a lot of complicated things going on. After that habeas corpus, if it is filed, they then have to set a hearing. So basically, that's where we're at right now, waiting for what's next.
And let's take a step back because you're in front of that McDonald's. For people who don't know, what happened in that McDonald's yesterday? Because I think we heard from some officers. If you're wondering exactly how that went down, that's one thing. But also the officers who responded to the scene had a very telling description of the reactions of Luigi Mangione. So talk to us about what happened in the establishment behind you.
I'm glad you brought that up, his reaction when officers arrived and were talking to him a bit. But it all started yesterday morning, Monday morning. Things are completely normal. It's, Monday, we're all going to work, grabbing our coffee here at McDonald's. And all of a sudden, a customer sees, you see the image here, this person right here, Mangione. Okay, they remember that this person looks similar to the images they've been seeing for about a week in regards to this nationwide manhunt. So they contact a McDonald's employee. That person calls 911. And we have the Altoona Police Department who respond. They see him. He is at a booth. He's got a laptop and a bag on the floor. And immediately when they go to talk to him, they say, we knew. We got our guy. The image that we've seen from New York, all the surveillance video from the cab and nearby the hotel, all of that looks very similar to the person who was sitting in front of them in this McDonald's right here. So at first he gives them the fake ID. You guys have talked all about this. This is the one that we also saw reports being used in New York, so they kind of connected it that way. So we got the fake ID. He's playing it cool, it seems. And then he gets visibly shaken when the attorneys mention New York. Hey, have you been to New York recently? He has a strange reaction and immediately starts shaking and looks a bit scared. So that is something that really stood out to officers here just yesterday morning.
Yep, that McDonald's is going to be a key location in this case. Sierra Gillespie is live for us in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for coming on, reporting to us, and also being our eyes and ears in that courtroom because unfortunately there are no cameras in Pennsylvania. It's the way it's been. I don't see it changing anytime soon, but Sierra Gillespie, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll get you on a little bit later.
Thanks, Jesse. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you. Okay, I want to bring back in my guests. By the way, we're going to take your questions. So if you have questions about the case, comments about the case, submit them on YouTube. We'll talk about them on here. So I want to bring it back on. I think we have with us Heather Barnhart, digital forensics expert. I think we're either trying to get Tracy Walder back on, but we'll see if we can. But who we do also have is Philip Klein. Now, Philip Klein is a personal protection officer, a security analyst who actually protected Brian Thompson on 3 different occasions between 2005 and 2009. Thank you. Oh, so we have Tracy. I'm glad to have everybody here. Philip, I actually want to start with you. We haven't had a chance to talk. First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, you lost, with the loss of Brian Thompson. What was your reaction to finding out that news last week? Let's start there.
Well, we were on duty over in Houston, Texas on another sortie, and we were with a client. I was pulled out of the situation by one of my senior agents that advised me that a situation had gone down in New York City earlier that morning, and that it had been somebody that was affiliated with one of our clients. We protected him in Dallas, Texas 3 times between 2005 and 2009. We were hired by the oil company that he was coming to give a presentation to. I found him to be just a wonderful gentleman. He listened to what we told him to do. When you get into the bubble, it's important that the protectee listen to what we tell you to do and what not to do. And we found him engaging conversation. My personal feeling was a little bit of shock. And I think my first question was, well, where was his detail? And they advised me that he did not have a detail. So I was totally confused by that.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about
Sure.
that? Why do you think he didn't have a detail? I mean, he's going to this investors conference in New York City. Yes, it's early in the morning, but any reason why he wouldn't have had a detail?
Well, let's look at him real quick. He makes $10 million a year. He sits on the biggest healthcare company in the United States, if not this continent or the world. So he should have had a detail. So it was one of two things. Either he shirked his detail or said, I'm going to New York. I can handle this. I don't need people around me. Or his company didn't provide it. We have not heard that part of the story yet. So that's going to be a very, very, very important part of this whole schematic is that, he did the right things. He stayed at a secondary hotel. That was about the only thing I think he did that was good. I did talk to a couple of friends of mine that are police officers up at New York PD, and they advised me that he did stay. He did go out the night before to a couple of bars by himself. He did not have a detail up there. He did not have a detail around. The healthcare company did not call down there. A representative of the healthcare company and the detail did not call and say, hey, look, we're coming to town. So it looks like he was going solo. Again, back to the question, how'd that happen? The answer is either he decided he didn't need security or they did not provide it for him. There's no other answer. So we'll find out in the next days, I'm sure, what that story is.